Hi, I am the List Girl and this is my videographic channel.
Hi, I'm the List Girl, and true to the name, I'm a little bit obsessed with lists, of which this channel consists of 3. My bucket list allows me to come out of my comfort zone through experiencing new skills, hobbies and activities, as well as introducing me to amazing new cultures and lifestyles. Then there's my personal upgrades list designed to help me pick up the traits and habits that I lack in order to grow and develop into a better person. And lastly, there's my career list to keep me on the track to success in both my YouTube career and my business of selling nerdy collectibles. But at the end of the day, I'm just a huge nerd somewhere on the spectrum with way too many hobbies, just trying to prove that life truly is what you make it.
With my list, I set out to discover the world, to discover new cultures, gain new experiences, new skills, but most importantly, I set out to discover myself.
Today I'm going to be reviewing Ready Player One book for a couple of reasons. One, it's on my A to Z author challenge. I finished reading this a little while ago. The second reason being that this book has very easily, very rapidly made itself to my favorites, and it's very much inspiration that I had for making my All Things Nerdy website / blog / forum thing for my business for All Things Nerdy. I'm just gonna jump right in because I have a lot that I want to say. First of all, one thing that I love about books that are from movies is that if you love the movie, you know that you can pick up the book and you probably discover way more scenes, extended versions of the story itself. You probably get to know a lot more about the characters themselves, a lot more background on the variety of characters, and just the books tend to be better than the movies. From the get-go, have been in love with Ready Player One since it came out. This I only just read. I don't know if I was aware that they had a book, but I am now. There are several things that I loved about the movie which I didn't love about the book, but there are also a lot of things that I loved about the book which I didn't love about the movie, but I'll get into that later. The point is, I love both. One of the things that I loved about the movie that I didn't love about the book was challenge number 2, the second challenge. The 2 other challenges, the first and the third, were way better in the book. Yes, the racing challenge in the movie was pretty epic, but I don't know, the jousting arcade type scene that they had going on in this book was just far more retro. It just really made me want to go to an arcade, which is one of my favourite places on earth. I love arcades, so that made me really happy. But yeah, and the third challenge, I thought it was quite interesting how, what's his face? Parzival, he was the one going into IOI's building rather than Artemis, which I'll get further into later on. But yes, I definitely preferred the second challenge in the movie rather than the book. I can't even remember what the second challenge in the book was. However, saying that, something else that I loved... Oh my god, my phone, I'm just going to put it on silent. Something else that I loved from the movie rather than the book was the ending. I thought the ending in the book was very anticlimactic. I don't know what it is about books. I love reading, and I'll sometimes, if I'm into a book, I'll eat it up, but then I'll get to like the last pages and you can clearly tell that the majority of authors are like, I literally don't know what to do here, let me just speed through the ending. And I feel like that is what happened here. Sorry, Ernest. The ending could have been better. Something else that I loved in the movie, rather than the book, was the entire war scene. I thought it was just far more epic. The war scene in the book was okay. It didn't even last that long. It all seemed like it happened very fast. And before you knew it, Parzival and his team were past Sorrento and into the third challenge. But you're like, wait, didn't a war just break out? And it doesn't really talk that much about that. it kind of goes into Sorrento's and Parzival's little thing that they had, but it doesn't really go into depth about the thing itself, because it kind of built it up to be this big, like, you know, battle that was about to break out, and it was just anticlimactic basically. But in the movie it was epic, and he had his speech at the start, and it wasn't just sending out a fucking email, but he, like, you know, got on the live screen and everybody was watching, and he did his little speech, and then everybody showed up to you know, take out 101. But yeah, it was anticlimactic in the book. One thing that I loved about the book, however, is how I got to learn more about Wade. Wade himself, especially when he was having conversations with his robot and he was going through his, like, daily routines and his exercises and getting into shape and all of that, and, like, trying to forget about Artemis and all that stuff. It really made me connect more to Wade. In the movie, I connect way more to Parzival, despite them both being the same person, but in the book I felt like I connected a lot more to Wade, which is odd because in both the movie and the book they're the same person, but I guess just the way that they played out in the movie and that it's written up in the book, it kind of just makes it seem like they're two different people, I guess. But I loved how in the book it got to, you know, got a lot more in depth about Wade as a person. And he also seemed a lot less selfish in the book. In the movie he's quite cocky. I'm not gonna lie, spoilers, I cried about what happened to Daito in this book. It did not happen in the fucking movie, so I was not fucking expecting it. But it happened, and I cried. And I was also really sad to find out that Daito and Shoto. Oh my god. Daito and Shoto are not actually siblings, at least in the book, because they are in the movie for sure. But they are not in the book, and that also threw me off, and I didn't like that. I really liked, I guess it's because I watched the movie first, but I really liked the fact that Daito and Shoto are in fact relatives, but they are not in the book, and that rather upset me and kind of threw me off. Something else that I really loved about the book is the teamwork. In the last challenge, how it kind of brought them together. In the movie, they kind of just slowly get together throughout the movie, but in the book it seemed like they were all just competing against each other, and then at the last challenge they kind of, you know, stopped butting heads and rather, like, you know, played really well as a team, and they, like, decided to make that choice at the end. Well, not really, they were kind of forced to, because in the book, the third challenge, you need three characters to get through the final gate. But I quite liked the fact that once they were through the final gate and Parzival was the only one there at the end, that his team stuck around and kind of tried to help him through as much as possible with the scene challenge thing that was happening, where Parzival had to play the character from the movie, and he had to, like, say the lines perfectly or else he'd lose the challenge. But his team or his friends were there to, like, back him up in case he forgot some lines, and that was really cute because they didn't really have to do that, but they did, considering the fact that throughout the entire book they were competing against each other. But in this last challenge they finally, like, kind of showed that they truly were friends and they worked really well as a team, and I really loved that. But then again, I also really loved in the movie how they slowly just, like, naturally became friends and helped each other as a team throughout the story. They helped each other in challenge 2, and then they helped each other in the third challenge as well, so I kind of liked both ways, but I thought the part where they were helping him out with the scene was very, very cute. I also really liked the fact that in the book they all ended up going to Og's house rather than just in the back of a van, despite finding the van in the movie very cool. I preferred H's and Wade's first interaction in this book or the movie, I'm not quite sure. I'm indecisive. I love them both. They're both very good, but I guess just because there was more to the interaction in the book rather than the movie, because in the movie it just happened all really fast, whereas in the book there was more to it, and it kind of gave more feeling and character to the interaction rather than just it just happened. It added emotions to it, and it made me feel things because they were both anxious to meet each other, especially H, because they were hiding the fact that they were the opposite gender and that they were actually lesbian and all these other things. And they were kind of forced to come out, I guess, in both the book and the movie, but I don't know, I felt like the book gave it more emotion, and I really loved that because it gave depth to the characters, allowed me to get them know them a lot more. And then there's also the fact that I do quite like the chase scene at the end in the movie, and the fact that I found the ending quite bland because they were just at Oggs and they were like, okay, we're done now, let's make out. Whereas in the movie, the ending, because they've just been like just got out of a speed chase and whatnot, and then Og shows up and he's like, oh yeah, here's your contract, let's sign it, and like Sorrento's taken away with like police officers, and that's all really cool. Whereas in the book it's just like they just find out through the news that Sorrento was arrested for everything he did. It kind of becomes background story now, like it doesn't matter anymore, but in the movie it's very at forefront. So it's like, oh yeah, like he got what he deserved, and you kind of feel the justice happening. Whereas in the book, it's like, oh yeah, everybody's just like forgotten about everything now, which makes no sense to me. Like that's what I feel about that. I absolutely, one of the major reasons why I have fallen in love with the book is the majority of nerdy fucking references to books, to video games, to old school music, vintage consoles. It just made it seem so much more real to me because it reached to me on a very geeky level, and I was loving every second of it. And I remember reading online a review like, oh, this is just a sadly written shitty story with a bunch of references to, like, you know, clickbait your readers. And you know what? Even if it is, I don't give a shit. I ate that shit up. This is a good book. I loved the references. There were some that I didn't understand what they were, but I highlighted them so I could find out later on. But there was a lot of references that I was like, oh my god, yes! And it just made me feel very nostalgic, and I loved that feeling. So I don't really care about that comment. I loved the book, and I loved the references. It made the story even more real to me because I understood the characters and their love for, you know, the video games and the books and the music, because I love that shit too. So it made me connect to the characters even more. Next, going back to what I was talking about at the start, where Parzival goes into IOI's building rather than Artemis, I loved that scene in the book, and how he hacks the entire fucking building. However, saying that, it was a lot more hardcore and very feminist for Artemis to shut down the orb rather than pre-programmed robot that just shows up in the middle of a battle. So it makes more sense for Artemis to have kidnapped in order to get to the orb, but I did think it was nice to see what it was like switched around, Parzival taking over this time, and to see what he would have done in Artemis's position. What I liked about it is the fact that I got to see both views. So in the movie I got to see what happened when Artemis was taken by IOI, and she then was able to get her hands on the orb and take down the defensive wall in order for her team to get to the final challenge. Whereas in the book, I got to see what Parzival did and his selfless act that he undertook to save his friends and get to the final challenge. So it was cool to see both perspectives. So I liked both ways, and I guess if I was to choose, I don't think I'd be able to choose which. Well, no, that's wrong. I'd say Artemis was pretty fucking badass, and I guess I'd say I preferred that because it's very fucking feminist, and I love that shit. But I did like seeing both perspectives. Something else I loved was after Parzival came out of the IOI building and just completely just kicked ass without kicking ass, because before he went into the building he created this entire like fake identity. He outed Sorrento as a murderer and a cheater all over the internet whilst he was still in the building. But the second he comes out the building, he's like, fuck this shit. He like cancels out that fake identity and just puts into the program that, no, I am Wade Watts and I am still alive. Fuck you, Sorrento. And that was just, I thought, I was on the train when I read that scene and I literally went out loud like, it's just, wow, the courage that this fucker must have had. I mean, yes, he was still under his fake identity, but to out him like that and then just leave the building and be like, fuck this fake identity, I am actually alive, that was sick. He basically just said fuck you Sorrento right outside his fucking building and then just like left, even though like Sorrento's on the hunt for him. And it was like such a short scene in the book, but it definitely made an impact. And finally, another scene in this book that I absolutely loved and I found 100% wholesome was the scene where Parzival goes off to the arcade and it just seems like he has the entire place to himself, which was quite weird, but he's just in there chilling on his own, having a great time, and it also felt as though it was just him and Halliday, despite Halliday not actually being there. And also it was a far cooler way of Parzival to earn the coin of extra life rather than just winning it to a bet from Og, which is what happened in the movie. Parzival played the arcade game in order to win the extra life, despite him not knowing that it's an extra life, it's just a little coin that Halliday sneakily left there on the side. I thought that was a lot more important, because like in the movie you're just like, okay, that's random, he just, you know, gets a quarter, okay, that's great. But in the book it highlights how important that coin is, because it's like, yeah, he can't just take the coin, he has to win the game in order to be able to physically pick up the coin, which makes a lot more sense to me basically. But yeah, I thought that scene was very wholesome, just him chilling by himself, but it kind of felt like Halliday was there with him. Just the whole thing. I was about to say there wasn't a moment where I put this down, but there was. But what happened was, I got to like this far. I was this close to the end and I did not want this story to stop. I did not want the book to finish. So I literally put it down for like several weeks and did not pick it up because I did not want the book to finish. And then I picked it up. So what I was about to say was technically a lie. But when I was reading it, I was reading it. But yeah, I did not want the book to end. But it did. If they made, I don't know how, but if they made Ready Player One a series, it would make me the happiest person on earth. I love the movie, I love the book, I just need a fucking series. But in summary, I feel like I love both the book and the movie an equal amount for different reasons. And I loved that the book gave me far more insight into the characters and the story itself, but the movie gave me far more insight into the oasis itself, like visually, because I could see it, and that's when I fell in love with it. I guess it's just because I watched it first, the movie. Although saying that, book had more locations rather than the movie, but I guess the visuals kind of helped perceive the world a lot clearer. Because I assume what would have happened if I had read the book first before the movie is I would have imagined some sort of Dungeons and Dragons type world, like D&D Online, rather than the whole punk sci-fi-ish.
Hi, editing Natasha here. I just realised that the whole video was recorded apart from the very end, so I have no outro. So I guess I'll do it now. So that is my review of Ready Player One. I hope you enjoyed, and just before I log off, I have one question for you. What is your next adventure?